Joining me today is Director Bryan Stirling, Department of Corrections. And we're here with an important message for the people of South Carolina, but also for the General Assembly. Recently, years ago, what is called a shield law was introduced at the request of Director Stirling. That law has not been passed. Since that time, in our death penalty progress, we have now 39 people on death row. And after the court challenges have been exhausted, or virtually exhausted on one, his execution date has been set for December the 1st. His name's Bobby Wayne Stone, and he killed a sergeant in Sumter, Sheriff's Sergeant, Mr. Sergeant Charlie Kubala, has a wife and 2 children surviving. That was in 1997. And so here we are in 2017, and the execution date has now been set by the court for December the 1st. But we're unable to do it because we don't have the drugs that are called for in the law to do a lethal injection. So why don't we have the drugs? The reason we don't have the drugs, despite intense efforts to get them, is because the companies that make them, the distributors who distribute them, and the pharmacists who may have to compound them, don't want to be identified. They are afraid that their names will be made known, and that they don't want to have anything to do with it for fear of retribution or exposure of themselves, their families, their businesses, all perfectly good reasons. And with the inquiring press and inquiring people in such communications these days, it's easy to see why they would not want to be identified for being just one part of that series of people that may have one way or another touched or mailed or worked or done anything with those lethal drugs. So here we are at a dead stop, and we can't do anything about it unless and until our legislature enacts the shield law that Director Stirling asked for years ago. What that shield law would do, very simply, is say that those people who are involved in all those procedures and processes that in any way involved with supplying these drugs are all innocent people, simply that their names would not be exposed. They would not be identified, either by subpoenas or freedom of information requests or things of that nature. It's very simple. And in order for us to proceed with justice in South Carolina, we must be able to carry out what the law has mandated. But again, we're not able to do it at this time because the legislature has not acted on this legislation. And we want them to act on it positively and quickly so that justice can be done in South Carolina according to the law. Director Stirling.
Thank you, Governor. A couple of years ago, I appeared before both the House and the Senate and asked them for a shield law. What we did was we looked around the country to see the states that were able to carry out executions using the drugs, and we compiled the laws from different jurisdictions around the country. We went, I testified in front of the House, I testified in front of the Senate. I think there actually was a death penalty committee, and I testified and answered all the questions in front of those committees and asked them to pass the law. What we're here today is to ask them to pass the law in this upcoming session. We currently have an order. We've got about a week and a half to come up with the drugs and find the drugs, and right now we do not have the drugs. We're still trying. We've been trying since I was notified that the drugs had expired. They expired a month before I took over at the department, and ever since then I directed my staff to try to find the drugs and find a supplier. Again, anytime we start a conversation with a company that makes the drugs, a pharmacy, a compounding pharmacy, or anybody that would be involved in it, they asked how they would be protected, and we told them that there's no shield law. So we are unable to get the drugs, and we're kind of in an interesting place right now with what we're going to do. So if the General Assembly will pass the law, then we believe strongly, like other states, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and other states, we will be able to carry out this execution, but right now we're unable to.
Any questions?
What do you say to critics who will say that you're withholding information from the public that they have a right to know?
Well, there are certain things I think the public has a right to know, and in this case, I think the state wants to carry out justice. The family deserves it. The court has ordered it, and we're unable to carry out justice. So in this case, I think, I'm happy to talk about the drugs that we use and all the other stuff, but honestly, the way and the reason that people want this is to go to the companies and stop them from selling the drugs. That's what I would say, is that this is for justice, and it's ordered by the state, by a court of law.
What are currently the drugs in our protocol, and are you looking at ways to change that protocol so as to be able to carry out execution?
Sure. So the drugs right now that we do not have are pentobarbital, which we could use midazolam. The gross case out of the United States Supreme Court from 2 years ago said midazolam was okay. Pancurium bromide, and the third drug is potassium chloride, none of which we have.
So we don't have any of those 3 drugs right now?
All of those drugs are expired, or we're unable to get them, and we've returned them to the manufacturer because they have been expired. One other thing that I will add is the FDA, we used to be able to get these drugs from other countries, and the FDA stopped us from doing that a couple of years ago.
Some states have gone to a single drug protocol. Is that something that you've looked at as well?
I'm not going to talk about what we're looking at, but we're looking at every option.
So what happens December 1st without this shield law in place?
It's a very good question, and when we get there we'll know, but we're going to continue to try to find the drugs. So far we've been unsuccessful, and again, I warned about this a couple years ago in the General Assembly when I testified, and I said, we're going to be here one day, what are we going to do? So that's why we're asking for action.
When was that decision by the FDA made that you said prohibits you from getting drugs from other countries?
It was before this current administration. Actually, I think the state of Texas has a lawsuit against the FDA now because they made them turn in some drugs. I think that was filed this spring, so you can find that online.
Is that really the crux of the problem, though? Is that FDA decision not allowing you to get drugs from other places that's made it so limited?
It's multifaceted. First of all, when we were able to get the drugs, we did get them from Europe, so that does take one way to get the drugs out, but also the other states that have the shield law, they're able to obtain the drugs and they're able to carry out the executions, and we don't have the shield law and we're not able to carry it out. That's why I went to the General Assembly and asked them to pass this law.
Are there any other forms of execution that the state would look into, or options for Stone?
Well, not for Stone, but overall, because he has made the choice to have lethal injection, which is the law allows for. The electric chair is a possibility. However, he made the choice as the law allows. The only way that these drugs, and it would go back to the electric chair, is if a court determined that the drugs were unconstitutional. No court has done that yet, and then it would go back to the electric chair.
The question was asked about what can we do when we get to December the 1st or some later date months after that. The easiest thing and quickest thing to do would be for the General Assembly simply to take this law up, take this bill up immediately and pass it. Because South Carolina has been clear, and the people of South Carolina clear in their support of justice, including the death penalty. And in order to allow that death penalty law to function through the courts is to pass this shield law. Otherwise, we'll be right here until that happens. Any more questions? Thank you for coming out.
Thank you all very much.